The Xbox One X is dead, but it's a good thing. We're a week away from the big showcase for the Xbox Series X, where hopefully we'll be seeing an announcement of a bunch of new games along with some more gameplay of games we already know about. But as part of that, Microsoft is already starting to pull a couple different moves to get ready, some of which is pretty exciting to actually hear about and think what it means for the future of next gen. Specifically, they are officially ending the Xbox One X already, and to top that off, they're building up an even bigger future for Xbox Game Pass Ultimate. So let's just break into a couple things and how I think this relates to their strategy as far as how to compete against the PlayStation 5. First thing I want to talk about is ending the Xbox One X, because this is somewhat of a surprise, but at the same time, not entirely. Normally, when you have a cross-generation time period where, you had an old system that's been around for a while and the new one comes out, there still is a degree of support for the past system. And that is still true in this case, as Xbox is not stopping production of the Xbox One S. However, they are ending production of the Xbox One X as well as the Xbox One S all digital, which isn't really a huge surprise. Now, what's interesting about this is that it shows the emphasis Microsoft wants to place on what their available consoles are. The One X doesn't make a lot of sense when there is the Series X, this big old powerful thing. There's Lockhart, which is probably going to be something that's almost as good but a little weaker, and then of course the Xbox One S, which is the current gen system that will still be sort of the bottom line of which Xbox system can play upcoming new games. With the heavy emphasis that Microsoft has been having on smart delivery and backwards compatibility on the next gen systems, there's always been this kind of hanging thought, I think, of how are they going to handle current systems. And now that we know the answer, it's really interesting because I'm wondering what this means for pricing. Because obviously the future that Xbox has in mind for at least the next year or two is when you go to a store, the shelf is going to have an Xbox One S, an Xbox whatever Project Lockhart actually ends up being called, and an Xbox Series X. If the Xbox One S is being kept around during these two brand new systems, and Project Lockhart as we know it is meant to be a cheaper system to begin with, then where does that leave the One S pricing? Are we entering a situation where an Xbox Series X is $500-$600, the Xbox Project Lockhart is something like $300-$350, and then having a One S go on a major price discount selling for $200, even maybe $150? Considering the heavy emphasis that Microsoft has placed on the concept of continuing to support the Xbox One in the age of their next-gen systems, it sounds like the move here is to make the One S the most affordable and appealing option to people that just want to kind of dip their toes into the Xbox ecosystem without having to necessarily buy a more expensive brand new console. And what makes this even more interesting is another bit of news that came out also today at the same time, is that they are officially launching XCloud as part of Xbox Game Pass Ultimate in September in select countries at no change in price. This means that for that same $15 a month you were paying for Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, which gave you online game support, games with the gold, the ability to play all those different games that are part of Xbox Game Pass, you can now also stream play those Game Pass games using the same service. Now, on the one hand, this is a great value add for anyone who's already involved in the Xbox ecosystem. If you haven't tried Game Pass yet as part of the beta, you can now do it as part of being a Game Pass member, so you can play games on your Xbox and on the go with your phone, play them, continuing the same save file, all great stuff. But one aspect here that I think not a lot of people are really touching on just yet is the fact that this opens up Xbox to people that just never buy an Xbox. There is no requirement that you have to own an Xbox to have an Xbox Game Pass Ultimate membership. So if you just don't even want to own an Xbox system, but you're interested in trying some of those games, you can just spend $15 a month, own no consoles whatsoever, maybe buy a controller just to make the control scheme better, and play games on your phone. The genius standpoint about this from a business standpoint is that it opens up these Xbox games to people that don't necessarily own any systems, and now gives them a reason to eventually want to upgrade and buy an Xbox over a PS5. Because if they've been using Game Pass Ultimate to play games on their phone, well, they've already been making progress on games. They already have save data. They've already been getting used to a lot of the stuff, and maybe even doing things like building up a friends list. So that gives them a reason to want to buy a Series X or a Project Lockhart before they buy a PS5. As a part of all this news dropping this morning, Microsoft made a kind of mission statement about their goals with next gen, and a lot of it drives home this concept of them wanting to be the pro-consumer option, doing things that benefit just people that want to play games and not really try to necessarily entangle themselves in this whole idea of a console war with Sony. And this is something that I have theorized and talked about time and time again whenever Microsoft has talked about some of their digital services, especially when Game Pass was first introduced. And that's the idea of the future of Xbox is not a system, but instead it's just the services that they offer. Xbox is no longer simply just a console you can buy out of the different choices out there. It's a service you can use to play games on your phone. It's a service you can use to play games on your PC. It's even something where you can use friend networking on a Nintendo Switch, an entirely unrelated platform that just happens to make use of Xbox Live for some select games. Now, what does this mean for the whole argument people like to make about Xbox Series X versus PS5? Honestly, I actually think it's going to be a slower going move for them. I think the big focus that Microsoft is really having here is trying to make an overall platform and ecosystem to get people into, whereas PlayStation is leaning much more heavily into traditional, here's a brand new, super powerful console we're releasing, and look at all these amazing, awesome exclusive games that you can play, and you can't have anywhere else. And while Microsoft might have answers to that at their event next week, where they'll be revealing more first-party games, as far as things are going right now, I think we're in a situation where PlayStation 5 is going to have a significantly stronger launch, but as time goes by, as more people get involved in the Xbox ecosystem through these other services, I think there's a very real argument for Microsoft really coming back. Not necessarily in having more sales with their current system, but just in terms of how many people are engaging with all the various products and services they're releasing as a part of this whole thing. After all, a similar thing happened in reverse back when the PS3 came out. The Xbox 360 was absolutely dominating in the first half of the life cycle, but as time went on and Sony was improving their services and releasing better games, and Xbox was getting comfy and started really heavily leaning into Kinect, more and more people started buying PS3s, and at the end of the life cycle, they basically broke even as far as worldwide totals are concerned. I think the main takeaway from all this news this morning is that right now, Xbox is definitely trying to play the long game. I don't think it's necessarily going to pay off in the next year, but I'm really curious to see where these two platforms stand 5 years from now.